The truth about the Ford Bronco. This is a big video.
Yeah, this is a big one.
We need to come up with an intro. The Bronco is obviously very off-road driven, focused.
Definitely off-road. I mean, we have to brainstorm. We have to get into this. Like hitting the trails.
Yeah, hitting the trails, driving through all this wilderness around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what about like off-roading? Yes. You know, just flexing the suspension like most Bronco owners should do.
Yes.
And like filling it up with all their camping gear.
Yeah, all the capabilities,
all
firewood, and tools, and sports.
Like everybody's gonna do with it.
Like the extreme environments you'll be in with it.
Or like the fact that you can take off all these panels and that way you have more visibility when you're out on the trails.
Yeah, wide open range, cattle out in the prairies. And we can show like what it's like to overland with the Bronco, to live in it, to sleep in it, to just experience it, become one with the Bronco.
I'm just putting it all in my notes. I think we actually have a pretty killer intro here.
Yeah, let's put it together.
Okay. Hello everybody and welcome back to Performance on Wheels.
Today we tell you the truth about the Bronco and the 4,500 miles we have owned it.
We're going to talk about things on the exterior and interior that stand out to us that are both pros and cons, and ultimately if this is going to be the vehicle that you should pursue purchasing.
Being that we've had the vehicle in some light off-roading as well as living in Minnesota, we're going to share some wintertime driving experiences with you, as well as just overall ownership and drivability.
However, knowing that 90 to 95% of all Bronco owners are never going to take the vehicle off-road, a lot of this review is going to be biased to the point of road driving as a daily driver.
Just so you know the facts of the vehicle we are talking about, it is a 22 model year Cactus Gray with the 2.7 liter V6 with over 400 pound-feet of torque, and we're obviously in the Big Bend with that two-door.
One of the things I really like about sitting in the Bronco, which just kind of makes it feel masculine, is this power bulge that they have in the hood. It just looks kind of aggressive when you're sitting back there. Not only that, but this design cue right here from the original Bronco, it's not only cool looking and makes it feel tough, but it does help a lot with placement of the front end of the vehicle. It helps with knowing where the corners are when pulling in and pulling out of parking spots, pulling into the garage. It is a cue that is used often in deciding where the front corners of the Bronco are that are actually extremely helpful. Down from there, we have the LED headlight option on this Bronco. It's an $800 option, and I think it is perfect. You need to get this option if you're getting a Bronco. It does gives you those cool daytime runners, gives you LED headlights, high beams, as well as LED fog lights. They are very bright at night and illuminate the road well. The only thing that I do not like about this, and not only just this on the Ford Bronco, but all Ford models, is the auto high beam feature. It is just unbelievably over the top. They turn on and turn off way too often. They take way too long to turn on sometimes, and then sometimes they take way too long to shut off. You're constantly getting flashed by other people going down the road, and you just feel bad. So ultimately, I never used the feature, and it could use an update in all Fords.
We're gonna go into the inside in just a minute, but let's talk about the outside. That two-door, so right, it's fun, it's trendy. That's what the original Bronco was, so that's the way it should be. But this isn't for everyone, and especially it's not for everyone if you live in a climate like we live in, where roads are icy, roads are slick, and there's frequent snowfall. The reason I bring this up is because that short wheelbase can add a little bit of excitement into your day. And I can share a personal experience of myself driving the Bronco right in the morning, and there's an option that doesn't come on the window sticker that I found out about on the Big Bend that we have. That option is when you're driving in a straight line at a constant speed, I learned that the Bronco has an option where it can actually soil your pants. And what I mean by that is while I was driving to work 50 miles an hour one morning for no reason at all, I randomly did a few back and forths, a few loose end moments, a few shitties, whatever you want to call it, back and forth, uncontrolled slides with the traction control on, and I found the clean boxers that I had just put on moments ago were no longer clean. Taking that a step further, my wife did have a similar instance where she pulled onto a interstate and the Bronco got a little squirrely. It's almost incontrollable if you turn traction control off, and if you are in two-wheel drive, to control a slide in the two-door Bronco with the immediate maneuvering that happens in that short wheelbase. Now, what I would say, and an option I'd love to see across all Broncos, even though you can only find it in higher trims, is the automatic four-wheel drive, where the computer systems are turning on and off and adjusting the power for you, where in the lower, I think 4 trim models, you only have the 4 high and 4 low setting. You still have the GOAT modes, but on the upper trim models, you have that automatic 4-wheel drive. So that is one thing I do regret, or an option I wish I did have, because we're finding ourselves using the 4-wheel drive more often than we would in other vehicles, simply because of that short wheelbase, and things get a little squirrely. The traction control does do a good job of keeping you in line. However, there's a lot of unpredictability that comes on slick surfaces and the two-door.
Following up his comments about how it drives in winter and the short wheelbase and stuff like that, I want to talk about another option, and that is the 2.7 liter V6 that this Bronco features. It is upgraded from the 2.3 liter, meaning that this is an automatic. You cannot even option a manual on it. You can only do that on the 2.3. This engine is a lot of fun. It really is. It's got about 100 more torque and 30 more horse than the 2.3, and it's a good time. I actually have a small story as well. I ran to go pick up some parts. I had my car taken apart in the garage, and I just asked my dad, quick, you mind if I take the Bronco to go grab some stuff? And there's this Ram on my way back that it was like an 1500 with the 5.7, and it was flooring it at every stoplight. And I got next to him at a stoplight, and once again, there he goes, floors it, and there I was behind him, and I floored it, and I absolutely blew his doors off. Definitely hurt his feelings. This is a fun engine to drive. It puts you back in your seat, but that doesn't come without cost. The gas mileage is not great on the 2.7. We do have the smaller tires on here, and with a recent road trip to Arkansas, our gas mileage just slowly decreased and decreased as our speed went up. Around 75 miles an hour on this road trip, we saw our gas mileage go from 20 to 19 to 18 to pretty much 17.9 average on this long road trip. Granted, the way that they tuned this motor, you can actually put 87 in it, and then it just detunes the power. So if you don't care about having that extra horsepower and torque, you can just rock 87 in it, which is definitely very slick in a turbo engine.
Kind of expanding on what Austin was just talking about with gas mileage and options, you know, a lot of people like the Sasquatch. It's the big tires, it's got these off-road features. It also comes with a rear end that's like 4.7, something like that, versus the open 3.73 that is in our Bronco. This is like the ultimate city Bronco that still has off-road capability. We don't have the big tires. We have the 373 rear end. So this is like as good as it gets. Is the smaller engine acceptable? Yeah, absolutely. This one's going to put a bigger smile on your face and will be more of a good time. So just keep in mind that gas mileage isn't only about the engine. There's also the rear end options that are going to change that. For example, at 75 miles an hour, we're seeing approximately 1900 RPM. If you did have the other rear ends at 75 miles per hour, you can expect your engine RPM to be up around 2,500, even getting close to 2,600. So take that into account. If that is important to you, 21 miles per gallon on a daily basis, zipping around town, going to work, versus 16 or 17. Another comment I see often is in reference to the hardtop. Can I just get the soft top? They're easier to find, they're a little bit cheaper. It depends where you live. If you live in any sort of cold climate, I would never advise or suggest that someone get a soft top. There are numerous photos and numerous people complaining throughout forums on the internet about snow getting into the interior after a snowstorm or a wind event. Even in the hard top, there's definitely some wind noise that is present. You notice it immediately after not being in the Bronco. It's kind of like a window crack to a certain degree, but there's clear wind that is there. So talking about Minnesota and having that hard top versus the soft top, it's insulated now. So back when we had like a 2013 Wrangler, there was no insulation. We always had the heated seats on high, and we always had the fan pretty much on full blast. So one thing the Bronco has figured out is probably some of the best heated seats in the industry.
Yeah,
to the point where they will burn your behind.
Yeah, and it just takes a couple of seconds. It's crazy.
Yeah, and also with the dual zone climate control that we have in the Big Bend, it's an option, it's not standard.
Yep.
You can set your temp where you need to, and with the insulated top, it's like a normal car. It's not like the old school Wrangler that I remember. You can have your fan speed on 1 or 2, and you will find yourself
old school as
turning
in
that
the
heated seat off.
JK platform he's talking about.
Right.
So JK, which was the one that was right before the JL, which is out now.
For sure.
I wanted to bring up another comment about the soft top, because he was talking about the soft top. I actually had a coworker that had a 4-door Bronco, and she was in an accident with a deer. Ultimately, something ended up happening. The front end was replaced, but she had the soft top. There was some point in this accident of some sort that the top had one of the main pillars bent in the process of this deer. It was a very long process. The vehicle was sold, then it was brought back because we didn't know it was broken. But I think they brought it through a car wash or something, and it was made very clear. You would think that you can just swap out the hard top and soft top quite easily. Like you'd think it's just a factory option. You could easily remove the hard top, so why couldn't you easily install a soft top, right?
Right.
It was actually a $15,000 repair to put a new soft top in the Bronco.
All OEM.
All OEM parts, because the entire thing needed to be replaced because there was one like scaffolding point or whatever you want to call it, structural point that was bent.
That's crazy.
$15,000 replacement.
That is absolutely bananas. Now that we're inside the Bronco, let's talk about a few things. I'm going to start off with a few things that I think are just like, I get it, but I'm still going to complain about them a little bit. The first one being the instrument cluster. So the Broncos have this nice little cute virtual digital screen, and then they have an old school analog like speedometer on there. That speedometer is like the biggest waste of space. They didn't want to spend another, I don't know, $20 or $30 per unit to make the whole screen digital. So now you have this completely pointless mile per hour speedometer that is always there. You never look at it because the other digital miles per hour is right in front of you and you cannot make it go away. So yes, that's where the temp is as well, I realize, but it's so small. I wish that the colors were different, because when you're in night mode and everything goes from white to blue, like everything blends together. For me, my wife's made the same comment as well. So there's got to be at least someone else out there that has that same complaint, I would imagine. Also, when we talk about driving the Bronco, I don't really like the seats on the lower trim. I don't like the fact that the passenger doesn't have lumbar. The driver does, and that is a must. But the seats in general, they're just like almost a little too squishy. They're missing a little bit support. I mean, I've driven a lot of new F-150s and a lot of new Super Duties. I just wish, even in the lower trims of those F-150s and F-250s, the ergonomics, the support, the comfort of the seats is amazing. So I was hoping that the Bronco would have that same quality, but it simply doesn't. I found myself moving around quite often, adjusting my position on the road trip because of that matter. I do like the fact that the Bronco has some ambient lighting just down in the footwells, even on this lower trim Big Bend. It does a nice job of not making it feel so dark and gloomy in here at night. It also, you obviously can't see all the plastic that's everywhere. That was a very bitter point to me when I first got it coming out of the Defender prior to this and stepping into the Bronco. It took me a while to get by that. However, I found the enjoyment of the Bronco when I was out on some trails. It truly is a capable vehicle, and although we weren't on anything too hardcore, it did give us the ability to try out the one pedal trail system, more or less the off-road cruise control for uphill and downhill. You set the speed that you want to go with a controlled descent or ascend through your GOAT mode, and then you just go. And it's fun to hear the different computers take over on the wheels. We were able to see that on some pretty steep terrain in northwest Arkansas. So that's when I started to really enjoy the Bronco, when I was able to put the windows down a little bit, get some fresh air, and not really have this sense that I'm driving this fancy luxury car that the Defender was. Very capable, but my level of care about the vehicle went down to a certain degree, and I don't mean that as a negative. It allowed me to enjoy the vehicle more. The one thing I will comment that when, I didn't capture this on video, but when I had the window down and when we were on some off-road, the jarring and clanking that was coming from this window from being on a rough environment, it was so bad that we had to roll it up. And I bring back a memory we brought up in a different video where we took the front 2 sections of the roof off and left everything else on. that buffeting that took place, the whoop, 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 was so bad that we had to put the tops back on. Now, I would assume that if we were putting the windows down all the way, that would definitely prevent that from happening. Looking forward to the summertime when we're not in wintertime mode, where we can take everything off and fully have that outdoor experience. With the 10-speed automatic, I like the fact where the positioning lines up, where your elbow can meet and where your hand can rest. That's where it ends though. The 10-speed, not only in the Bronco, but in other Ford products, is the clunky transmission. So it's a good transmission. I'm not saying it's not reliable. I'm just saying there's gonna be an event, whether you're picking up speed or going up a hill, there's gonna be some event in your daily driving where there's gonna be some clunking out of the transmission. And if you're not familiar with the vehicle and you're just zipping down the road, you're gonna think your vehicle's broken. It's just a hard clunk. It's a hard upshift, a hard downshift. And again, that is just a characteristic of Ford's 10-speed, not only in the Bronco, but other vehicles. I'm willing to bet there's been more than one person that has showed up to a Ford dealership complaining about a clunk or something occurring in their vehicle. That's how apparent it is, in my opinion. The other thing I will talk about with the Bronco, knowing that it's supposed to be this overland off-road vehicle, and knowing that you're supposed to be outdoor, capable of not only what the vehicle can do, but also supporting your needs, the lack of storage in here really becomes apparent on a road trip. Obviously, with 2 adults, if you don't have too much luggage, you have the back seat area, but just up in the main cabin, you only have the little scrunchy deals on the door and the limited space in front of the shifter. It fills up really quick with just some small basic items. So I would love to see some more storage. You know, perhaps if they went back to an old school column shifter and made better use of the storage space down in the console. That's one solution that comes to my mind.
That pretty much sums up our thoughts on the Bronco. And ultimately, should you purchase this vehicle as a daily driver? If you're cross-shopping this in the Wrangler, I would still personally take this. Absolutely, there's not even a question in my mind about that. But are you gonna enjoy it on a day-to-day basis? Does it feel cheap? Is it well laid out? Yeah, it is. I think you will enjoy it on a day-to-day basis. Just like the brief things that we brought up, you got to be careful about the short wheelbase in winter. You got to be aware of some gas mileage stuff. You have to be aware that it is a Ford product, and it does just feel kind of cheap here and there. There's no doubt about it. However, you do have a pretty good warranty. You do have the availability right now to, if you can get one of these at MSRP, make a little bit of money possibly down the road, or not lose any money owning a vehicle for some time. Have you had any issues with it so far?
Minimal issues. So there was one time when we turned it on and every warning light and message known to man came across the display.
Okay.
The parking brake set. It was really weird. It only happened one time. Shut the vehicle off, turned it back on, and it was fine again. So something freaked out.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would say is there's obviously some... The sync system's good, but it's not awesome.
No, sync definitely isn't awesome, and that's actually where I would take probably the Wrangler over this if you're talking about tech.
Yeah.
Uconnect is a better system than sync in my opinion.
Right.
It just feels old, it feels dated, it feels cheap.
And that's not just a Bronco thing. That's like Ford in
all
general.
Ford thing, and it's actually
and it's okay.
What's a little disappointing to me is like the Mach-E and the Lightning, for example, which are electric and competing with Tesla. I've had some seat time in both of those vehicles playing around with the sync system in them, and it just feels so laggy and old.
Yeah.
Like you can compare that to a Tesla, what feels like an iPhone, and it's just like, come on, guys, like do a little bit better.
So guys, we'll continue to make videos about the Bronco throughout our ownership experience, toying with if we want to do any mods to it or if we're just going to enjoy it the way it is. Regardless, we'll keep you updated on our ownership experience. Please make sure to check out our video on is the 2-door Bronco practical if you want to know what that size of owning a Bronco is really like. Thank you so much for tuning into the video today on Performance on Wheels with me, Todd, and my son, Austin. We look forward to seeing you guys next time.
See you guys.